ضبط طريقة الجوية وانت بعتوها. ضبط طريقة الجوية وانت بعتوها. تلبى الطريقة الجوية وتبعتوها. تلبى الطريقة الجوية وتبعتوها. معي ثلاث بطاريات من التلفزيون تبعت لي واحد. معي ثلاث بطاريات من التلفزيون تبعت لي واحد. ظبط طريقة التلفزيون تبعت في واحد. ظبط طريقة التلفزيون تبعت في واحد. ظبط طريقة التلفزيون تبعت لي واحد. ظبط طريقة التلفزيون تبعت لي واحد. ضبط طريقة الجميع تبعتوها. ضبط طريقة الجميع تبعتوها. ضبط طريقك التلفزيون تبعتوها. ضبط طريقك التلفزيون تبعتوها. ضبط طريقة التلفزيون تبعت واحد. ضبط طريقة التلفزيون تبعت واحد. تظبط طريقة التلفزيون تبعت لي واحد. تظبط طريقة التلفزيون تبعت لي واحد. ضبط طريقك التلفزيون تبعتوها. ضبط طريقك التلفزيون تبعتوها. تلبى الطريق الجوية تبعت واحد. تلبى الطريق الجوية تبعت واحد. معايا ظبط طريقة التلفزيون تبعتوها. ظبط طريقة التلفزيون تبعتوها. بطاريات الجريدة ممكن يبعتوها. ضبط بطاريات الجريدة ممكن يبعتوها. بطاريات من التلفزيون تبعت لي واحد. ضبط بطاريات من التلفزيون تبعت لي واحد. ضبط طريقتهم اليوم تبعتوها. ضبط طريقتهم اليوم تبعتوها. ضبط طريقة اليوم تبعت واحد. ضبط طريقة اليوم تبعت واحد. ظبط طريقة التلفزيون تبعتوها. ظبط طريقة التلفزيون تبعتوها. ضبط طريقتنا اليوم تبعت واحد.
Israelis who live in the northern part of the country are running to bomb shelters yet again because they are under continuous rocket fire from Hezbollah terrorists in Lebanon. At the same time, the Israeli military continues to strike Hezbollah targets throughout Lebanon. After more than a year of war, everyone is asking, how does the war in Lebanon end? Israel had said that its goal in this war is to create the conditions that allow for the return of more than 60,000 Israelis who fled their homes in northern Israel after Hezbollah attacked them with rockets, anti-tank missiles, and suicide drones. Okay, so what conditions will allow these Israelis to return home? Here's one condition. Hezbollah can't be waiting in the hills to open fire again at a time and a place of its choosing. We're not going to sit and wait for another October 7th style massacre, which is exactly what Hezbollah was planning. In fact, Hezbollah needs to back off. It hasn't backed off, and that's why Israel is pushing it away. Israel's military success against the Hezbollah has opened the door to a diplomatic end to the war in Lebanon. Israel is open to a diplomatic solution, but it can't be a solution that brings us back to the reality that existed before the Hezbollah started this war. So what does need to happen? Israeli journalist Barak Ravid reported that Israel gave the United States a document last week with its conditions for a diplomatic solution to end the war in Lebanon. Israel is demanding that it will be allowed to engage in active enforcement in Lebanon to make sure that the Hezbollah doesn't rebuild exactly as it wants to. Israel is also demanding the freedom of operation in Lebanon skies. Now, these are very reasonable conditions when you are living next to a designated terrorist organization. Whoever doesn't like these conditions needs to be clear about what really needs to happen. Hezbollah must disarm forever. If the Lebanese army and UN forces do more to disarm the Hezbollah, then the IDF will do less. If the Lebanese army and the UN forces fail to disarm the Hezbollah, then the IDF will continue its operations in Lebanon. Whoever wants peace in Lebanon must keep up the pressure on the Hezbollah until it can never threaten the people of Israel again. The Hezbollah won't be disarmed by the UN resolutions with no enforcement mechanisms, just out of their own free will. The Lebanese army needs to deploy in southern Lebanon and take responsibility for what is happening there. This is a basic requirement of any sovereign country. The Lebanese army needs to inspect a very wide variety of private properties in Lebanon, as the Hezbollah uses Lebanon and private properties within it as a launching pad from which to fire upon Israel, store weapons, and/or for its finances. Last night, the IDF conducted a series of targeted intelligence-based strikes against dozens of facilities in Lebanon used by the Hezbollah to finance its war against Israel. Civilians in Lebanon were warned before the strike so that they could move to safer areas. Most people don't know that Hezbollah has its own banking network in Lebanon. These Hezbollah banks operate separately from the Lebanese financial system. They are not under any supervision of the Lebanese government or the central bank. The Hezbollah has received hundreds of millions of dollars from the Islamic Republic of Iran annually, and this money played a key role in funding Hezbollah's war against Israel. The IDF strikes against Hezbollah's banks are part of its ongoing efforts to degrade the Hezbollah and prevent it from rebuilding in the future. One final item, with your permission today. U.S. Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin said that an advanced American anti-missile system is now in place in Israel. It's called THAAD, which stands for Terminal High Altitude Area Defense System. It adds to Israel's already formidable missile defense systems. Israel currently has the Iron Dome for short-range missiles, David Sling for medium-range missiles, and the Arrow 3 for long-range missiles. As we have seen in the past year, all of these systems are indeed needed. The THAAD is in place in case Israel needs extra protection against Iranian ballistic missiles. A few weeks ago, Iran fired around 200 ballistic missiles at Israel. Israel is expected to respond to this Iranian attack at any moment, and Iran may respond again by firing hundreds of ballistic missiles yet again. We are fighting on 7 fronts, and our relationship with our allies is more important than ever. Now back to you. Let's take some questions from our audience watching live on social media.
This is a question that is coming through live from our YouTube live stream. The question is about our hostages. The Israeli Prime Minister has offered amnesty in exchange for Hamas captors who let the hostages go, and at the same time, the former CEO of SodaStream has offered a cash reward for people who release hostages. Are you optimistic now that Sinwar is gone that there will be some type of hostage release agreement?
Thank you for that very important question. I've always said from the start that once Sinwar, the head of this atrocious operation on October 7th, is gone, this will open the path to a real solution. It's not going to be easy. But yes, offering money, offering amnesty to those who are holding the actual hostages is one way, and it's an important way. But also don't forget the Egyptians. Not necessarily negotiations need to take place because there isn't necessarily a figure on the other side with whom to negotiate. But yes, the Egyptians have a very important role. They can have the intelligence, they can go in, they know the area, they know the language, they know the mentality, they can get the intelligence and know where the hostages are. And why would they do that? They have a vested interest in getting it done because they want the attack and the war to be over. As soon as we have the hostages back, things are going to look much, much more peaceful.
There's a report in the Times of Israel that the U.S. Special Envoy for Lebanon, Amos Hochstein, has said that going back to UN Security Council Resolution 1701 is not enough, and a formula needs to be devised to end the conflict once and for all. Are you optimistic upon hearing this statement from the chief U.S. diplomat on this issue?
I'm optimistic hearing the statement of the American emissary if the IDF continues to lash out at the Hezbollah and to weaken it and to disarm it and to destroy its financial assets and to destroy its weapons and the storage places. That makes me optimistic because the harder we hit them, the more likely they are to be able to actually come to some kind of an agreement. I am not optimistic that without the continued pressure, military pressure, they will agree to anything. And 1701 is in place for 18 years already. It is a UN resolution that was supposed to be carried out by the UN peacekeeping forces, and it has not been actually carried out, neither by the Hezbollah nor by the UN peacekeeping forces. And therefore, that alone is not enough. There needs to be a comprehensive agreement, but a continued pressure, military pressure by the IDF.
Many people on our live streams, whether Instagram or YouTube or X, are asking a question about news that was breaking just recently that 7 Israelis were arrested for spying on behalf of Iran and helping Iran target IDF military bases. What are your thoughts on this story and Iran's efforts to wage war in a sophisticated way on 7 fronts against Israel?
So I have been writing, speaking, and explaining for a very long time the modus vivendi of the Islamic Republic of Iran's way of going about to make sure that its ideology is carried through. The ideology, I remind everyone, is to control the world and make it into a Sharia-based radical Islamic caliphate. I know it sounds like science fiction, but it is what it is. And in order to do that, what they do in the Islamic Republic of Iran is disintegrate countries from within. In the chaos and the instability, they go in and they start to do things with the population, inside the territory, and so on. That's what they did in Lebanon, in Syria, in Iraq, in Yemen, and so on. And that's what they've been trying to do with Israeli civilians, both Arab and Jewish, for a very long time. And unfortunately, they have succeeded with some people, and there are investigations going on about this. And this obviously must stop by the security apparatuses of Israel. But yes, that's their modus vivendi. And they are doing the same thing in the West, in Europe, in every one of your countries, and in the US, and in Canada. That's what they do.
We have 2 questions about Egypt, one of them from someone watching on YouTube, another from Instagram. How do we know that the hostages aren't in Egypt, and is the Egyptian army going to help us rescue the hostages? What role is Egypt currently playing now that Sinwar is out of the picture and there's a lot of talk about a potential hostage release deal?
So the interest of the Egyptians, one needs to understand, is stability, because the current situation is very much a problem for Egypt on 2 grounds. One, their fear of a leakage of the Palestinian population from the Gaza Strip into the Rafah, the Egyptian side of Rafah. They don't want the Palestinians on their side. They don't trust them. They hate the Hamas. They believe that if the Palestinians will be in their territory, more instability and more attempts to actually attack the regime in Egypt would ensue. So they don't want a continuation of the hostilities. And second of all, they don't want the war to continue because it hurts them financially and economically from the seaside and in terms of the stability and the leisure and the tourism in Egypt, which is a significant income for the country. And it is already in economic problems. So they want the war to finish as soon as possible. Because they have that interest, they should and they can and they have the capabilities and the know-how to go inside the Gaza Strip, find the hostages, and give their whereabouts to the Israelis or to the Americans in order to get them out, whether with money to the captors or with amnesty to the captors. But the know-how about where those hostages are can be held by the Egyptians. And because they have a vested interest in stopping the war, I believe that there is a greater chance, now that Sinwar is gone, that they could do so. Yes.
This is our final question today. I'm reading a headline right now in the Times of Israel that Lufthansa has suspended flights until November 10th. It's very common to read about suspended flights to Israel. What is your message to people around the world who would like to connect with Israel but have a difficult time coming right now?
There are so many ways to connect with Israel at this day and age. First of all, in spirit, in standing for Israel, in actually explaining everything that we've been explaining on a daily basis and giving you information, but also read, diversify your sources on Twitter, on LinkedIn, on Facebook, etc. Read and try not to rely on the mass media, that from Al Jazeera and from the BBC, which really distorts the truth, unfortunately. You can explain the narrative. You can be an ambassador for Israel. You don't necessarily need to physically come here in order to be able to help. You can do that in your language, to journalists, to decision makers, to politicians. You can write to decision makers. You can also write and suggest some issues if you have amazing ideas, and we can try and answer that. Just the fact that you want to help doesn't mean you need to physically come here. You have the ability to help, and I believe strongly that each and every one who is actually watching cares enough and has the spirit and the ability to make a difference amidst their own circles. So thank you for asking, and good luck with doing everything that you can. Thank you so much for being with us. We're going to be here tomorrow, yet again, as always, at 3 p.m. Israel time, and we're waiting to see you yet again.
त्योहार में तैयार तो सब होंगे, तुम सवर के आना विद स्विस ब्यूटी।
ब्यूटी पीएसएस तापसी पन्नू की तरह आप भी त्योहार के लिए सवर के आइएगा विद स्विस ब्यूटी। शॉप नाउ ऑन swissbeauty.in और ऑन योर फेवरेट ऑनलाइन स्टोर।
Welcome! This lesson introduces you to pfSense. pfSense is a free, open-source, feature-rich firewall. Along with firewall services, it also performs a variety of network and security-related functions. Although pfSense runs on FreeBSD, practically all management of the firewall after the initial configuration is done through a nicely laid-out web interface. Initial setup is done with a convenient setup routine. Once you assign the interfaces and, if needed, IP addresses, you'll be good to manage via the web. You can see a complete list of applications and features at pfsense.org. Scroll to the bottom and select Features from the footer menu. pfSense offers you virtual private networking or VPN server, high availability, load balancing, traffic shaping, Unified Threat Management, or UTM. Of course, it's a router and a firewall. Domain Name System, or DNS, and Dynamic Host Configuration Protocol, DHCP servers. Intrusion Detection System and Intrusion Prevention System, IDS-IPS. A transparent caching proxy. Web content filtering. Stateful packet inspection. Geographical IP blocking. Anti-spoofing, virtual local area network or VLAN support, virtual private networking or VPN support with many options, Snort or Suricata-based IDS and IPS, emerging threats database, IP blacklist database, deep packet inspection, open source add-ons, many enterprise reliability and user authentication options, web content filtering options including DNS blacklisting, great web-based configuration and management console, system security options, and copious reporting options. Many enterprise products from companies like Cisco, Juniper, Fortinet, WatchGuard, and Palo Alto, to name just a few, would charge you huge money to license these features on their devices. Depending on the size of your infrastructure you want to protect, licensing could range from thousands to hundreds of thousands of dollars. Earlier in my information technology career, I installed, configured, and maintained firewalls by several of those vendors for customers as a consultant. Later, after finally learning of the outstanding benefits of open source software and discovering pfSense, I installed pfSense virtual appliances in front of our entire IT infrastructure. Whether you're a home user who enjoys learning about security, a network administrator or system administrator at a small to medium-sized business, or want a flexible free tool to secure your enterprise infrastructure or parts of it, pfSense is worth your consideration. pfSense provides a free firewall in the form of software for your home or office that you can run on old hardware or virtualize, or if you want a pre-installed, cost-effective offering direct from Netgate, pfSense has you covered. I have an SG1100 on its way from Netgate for my home. This would be adequate for a home or a very small office of up to maybe 10 people or so. Maybe you could do 20, but why not go a little bit bigger if you have a small office? If you have a larger office, you could get an SG3100 or SG5100. If you have a large business, consider the fully fledged high availability XG series. In the coming lessons, you'll learn how to download, install, and configure pfSense to protect your home or business. This lesson covers the installation options available to you for pfSense. Whether you want pfSense for your home, small office, home office, enterprise, or the cloud, pfSense has you covered. For home or small office environments, you could install pfSense on some of your old hardware you had lying around in your basement, or you could buy a really low-cost, effective, pre-installed hardware device from Netgate. I just ordered an SG1100 for $159 US to protect my home. To install the hardware, you want to download either the memory stick installer or the ISO image. The USB memory stick installer will let you just install the image to your memory stick, plug that into a USB port on the system you want to turn into a firewall, boot, and install pfSense. The ISO image can be used to install from a CD-ROM or DVD, or it can be used to create a virtualized appliance on a platform that doesn't yet have its own downloadable image, like VMware ESXi, VirtualBox, KVM, Xen, or Proxmox. If your infrastructure is in the cloud on Amazon Web Services or Microsoft Azure, there are pre-built images for you to use to protect your cloud environment. If you want to upgrade a pfSense firewall you purchased from Netgate, you can download a pre-tuned image for your device. I'm not sure what circumstances would lead you to want to do this, as you can just upgrade from the web admin console, but it's an available option. That covers the installation options for pfSense. You could download an ISO image or memory stick image, a cloud-based appliance for Amazon Web Services or Microsoft Azure, or a Netgate optimized image. This lesson covers the minimum recommended hardware for pfSense to run properly. At a minimum, you'll need a 500 MHz central processing unit or CPU with 512 megabytes of random access memory or RAM, but a 1 GHz CPU with 1 GB of RAM is recommended. You can, if you want, use hardware that's almost 20 years old to run pfSense. 1 GHz processors came out in 2000. If you have old hardware, it will very, very likely be able to run pfSense. If this is for home use, and you don't mind circumventing your firewall while you look for replacement hardware in the event of a failure, use what you will. If this is for a business, you may want some fairly modern, reliable hardware. pfSense provides some guidance about use of some of the features available that will work better with newer, more capable hardware. Virtual Private Networking, or VPN, to connect to your home or business will require a beefier CPU. If you want to use the captive portal feature, locking down who can do what on your network, that will also require a better CPU. If you'll have large state tables, which basically means you'll either have a lot of users or you'll have a few users with a whole lot of network connections to keep track of, you'll need a beefier CPU. And some of the packages you may want to install will require more CPU and RAM. The Snort Intrusion Detection System, Intrusion Prevention System, or IDS-IPS, is one example. The network interface card, or NIC, you choose is as important as the CPU and the RAM to your maximum throughput. You'll want at least 2 NICs for pfSense to be set up in the most common configurations. pfSense recommends Intel cards or systems with built-in NICs for throughput up to 1 gigabit per second. You may want to learn more about available options if you need throughput better than 1 gigabit per second. As a rough guideline with no packages installed, pfSense recommends the following minimum hardware to produce the desired throughput listed. If you want 10 to 20 megabits per second, an Intel or AMD CPU of at least 500 megahertz is needed. If you want 21 to 100 megabits per second, a 1 gigahertz Intel CPU or AMD CPU is needed. For 101 to 500 megabits, it'll be an Intel or AMD CPU at 2 gigahertz or higher with PCIe network adapters. For more than 501 megabits per second, you'll want a multi-core 2 gigahertz or higher CPU, of course still using PCIe network interface cards. If you're using pfSense to protect your internal infrastructure, including traffic within your wireless or wired networks, you'll want a robust system. For a detailed list of hardware that is compatible with FreeBSD, see the latest FreeBSD compatibility hardware list. Remember that pfSense runs on FreeBSD. To summarize, while you can run on hardware that's quite old, you'll want more modern hardware for corporate systems and for higher throughput, or for using additional features on your device like VPN or packages like Snort IDS-IPS. One way you can set up an entire lab to learn to use pfSense is by using virtualization software like VirtualBox. VirtualBox is maintained by Oracle and is free and available to Windows, Linux, or Mac OS X users. That should cover anyone taking this course. You can download it at virtualbox.org. Virtualization software lets you run an operating system within an operating system. The operating system you will run inside VirtualBox is called a virtual machine or VM. You can download pfSense as an ISO image, then boot your VM to that to install pfSense as a VM. You can also put other Windows or Linux virtual machines on VirtualBox and have them behind or inside your pfSense firewall. You can set all of this up for free, so please give it a try. You'll see how to install VirtualBox on Windows and Mac OS X in the next lesson. The process is very similar for installing on Linux. Don't worry if you've never been exposed to virtualization before and this doesn't make sense to you right now. You'll understand as you proceed through the lessons. Even if you plan to install directly to hardware eventually, please consider learning VirtualBox, as understanding VirtualBox can help you in the future whether you're a home user or an IT professional. You want to install and learn to use pfSense, but you don't have any spare hardware you can use. What to do? Use VirtualBox. It's free software that lets you run multiple operating systems within an application on your existing computer. It's available for Windows, Mac OS X, Linux, and Solaris. That covers any operating system you're likely to be using. Once you've tried a virtual environment, installing on hardware seems slow and painful. Many server infrastructures are virtualized, running on VMware ESXi, Microsoft Hyper-V, or are in the cloud on Amazon Web Services, DigitalOcean, or a similar provider. Taking a moment now to learn VirtualBox increases your options for trying new operating systems and practicing new things yourself, and can make using virtualization software at work more understandable. The operating system you installed the downloaded VirtualBox software to is called the host. The The systems you install are called virtual machines or guests. Virtual machines are often abbreviated as VMs. So let's get VirtualBox installed. Download the appropriate package for your operating system from virtualbox.org/wiki/downloads. Once it's downloaded, browse to the file. It will probably be in your Downloads folder unless you typically download to another location or moved it. I'm showing the steps for Mac OS X here, but it will be similar for other operating systems. For Mac OS X, double-click on the VirtualBox DMG file to start the installation process. Your Mac will verify the integrity of the downloaded file. The VirtualBox installation window will open. Double-click on the virtualbox.pkg file. Your system will verify the integrity of the virtualbox.pkg file. A window will open asking you to run a program to determine if the software can be installed. Click on Continue to continue the installation. In the Install Oracle VM VirtualBox window, click on Continue. Enter your username and password if prompted, then click Install Software. If the installation was successful, click on Close to close the installer window. Under number 2 in the VirtualBox window, double-click on the Applications folder to open it and browse to VirtualBox. Double-click on VirtualBox to launch it. You can also launch it from Launchpad. For Windows, double-click the executable you downloaded and follow the default installation prompts. Then open it as you would any other application. On a Windows install, consider right-clicking the downloaded executable and installing it as administrator. I haven't had it happen myself, but I had one student report a grayed out permission when he was trying to select a certain network setting. Installing as administrator will minimize your chances of encountering this error. In this lesson, we'll install pfSense as a virtual machine on VirtualBox. Let's do this step by step. Go to pfsense.org/download. In the Downloads dialog, select AMD 64-bit, select CD Image ISO Installer, and select the mirror that's closest to you. Mirrors are just sites that have the same content hosted in multiple locations, so you can pick one that's geographically close to you. Then click on Download. This will typically download to your Downloads folder. You'll have to extract the ISO file after you download it. Once the file is downloaded, go to the folder where it was downloaded, typically your Downloads folder. Right-click on it and extract the file. On a Mac, you can do this just by opening it with the Archive utility. And there it is. I have another copy, so it's showing as 1. Once you have your ISO file downloaded and extracted, open VirtualBox. Click on New. Type in a meaningful name for your new VM. Select BSD for the type and FreeBSD 64-bit for the version, and click on Continue. If you have plenty of memory, I recommend putting at least 2 gigs or 2048 megabytes and clicking Continue. Create your virtual hard disk now. Leave VDI selected and click Continue. Leave Dynamically Allocated and click Continue. This means the drive will be small and it'll only hold exactly what it needs to, but the operating system will think the full space is there. It'll just grow as it needs to. It'll save space on your hard drive. You can leave these at default, so 16 gigabytes and pfSense for the name of the storage. Now it's there, but we have to change some settings before we try and boot to it. So right-click and go to Settings. First click on Storage. Click on the DVD drive. Choose your pfSense downloaded image. You may have to browse to that by clicking Choose Optical Disk File and browsing to it on your operating system. Then click on Network. I set my adapter to bridged adapter. I have easier setup that way. It's up to you. You could leave it at NAT and see how that works for you. And also configure a second adapter. We need 2 network interface cards for a firewall. The other one is going to be internal network. Then click on OK. Then we double click to boot our new virtual machine. You'll see some text scroll by as the operating system installs. When it says pfSense installer, just hit Enter to accept. Leave Continue with Default Key Map highlighted and hit Enter to select. Or you can scroll down to a different type of keyboard and hit Enter to select that. Leave Auto USF Guided Disk Setup selected and click and hit Enter for OK. Here we're going to exit to the shell. And we're going to say shut down -H now to shut down and halt now. So when it says the operating system has halted, press any key to reboot. Hit the Command key if you're on a Linux, the left Command key, to get your cursor back. Or if you're on a Windows, hit Control and Alt and let go, and then you'll get your cursor back. At the bottom of the screen, you'll see a little DVD. Click on that and click Remove Disk from Device. If you didn't do that step, when you reboot, you'd go through the install routine again. So we'll press any key to reboot. Just let this time out, or you could hit 1 to enter multi-user mode. And when you get to this screen, you're done for now. We want an operating system with a graphical user interface, or GUI, to be available to manage pfSense. I'll show you how to install Ubuntu Desktop to fulfill that role. You're free to use any virtualization software you may want. VirtualBox is free and it's available for Windows, Mac OS X, and Linux, so that's why I chose it. I'll start with a description of the network topology I'll use. I'll have pfSense configured with 2 virtual interfaces or virtual network interface cards. One will be bridged to my computer's network. You could use NAT if you prefer. And the other will be on the internal network. The internal network will only be visible to other systems added to it within VirtualBox's network. The bridged interface will be the WAN interface, and the internal network interface will be the LAN interface. This matches the configuration from the Installing as a Virtual Appliance to VirtualBox lesson. This will have just one network interface on the internal VirtualBox network, so it will have to go through pfSense to get to our host network or the internet. You may want to use a Windows VM if you prefer. You can download a Windows VM from the link in the References section. Now we'll download Ubuntu Desktop and install it as a virtual machine for use in our lab. So go to ubuntu.com/download/desktop and download Ubuntu 18.04 LTS. LTS is for long-term support. Remember where that's downloading to, because you'll need that ISO file later. I'm going to cancel because I've already downloaded it. Now open VirtualBox and we'll create a new virtual machine. Give it a reasonable name. It's already got Linux selected and it's got version 64-bit, which is what we want. We'll click Continue. Set memory to 2048 minimum, if you have enough memory to do so. We'll leave this at default and click Create and Continue. Dynamically allocated, Continue. We're going to set the size at 20 gigabytes. We'll right click and go to Settings. Under Storage, we'll have to select our Ubuntu 18.04 desktop. If it's not listed there, you'll just click Choose and browse to it. And under Network, we're going to select Internal Network. This will let us talk to our firewall over the same internal network. Then click OK. And then double click to start our VM. When you get to this screen, select Install Ubuntu. And then its defaults pretty much all the way through unless you have to change something because you have a different language. We will choose minimal installation because all we really need on this VM is the web browser. We don't need all the utilities and Office software and games. And we'll save some space by doing a minimal install. So we'll choose that, click Continue. We're going to use LVM because we like LVM. It's Logical Volume Manager. Click on Continue. Hopefully your time zone's right. If it isn't, please just click in the appropriate area, click Continue. Add your name. I like to keep the name similar to what I named it in the as a VM. So I'll type Ubuntu and enter a password. And I always leave mine set to require login, require a password for login. Once the installation is complete, click Restart Now. It says please remove the installation medium and then press Enter. You can just press Enter, it automatically does this for you. Log in using the credentials we entered. Get to a command prompt and check our networking. So we have an IP on our VirtualBox internal network of 192.168.1.11. And we should be able to get to our firewall. You'll get a warning about the connection not being secure. That's okay. It's a self-signed certificate. So we'll click on Advanced. We'll click on Add Exception. And we'll click on Confirm Security Exception. And we're there. This is the pfSense login screen where we can start configuring our firewall. Finally, we get to start configuring pfSense. Start up VirtualBox and make sure both your pfSense firewall and your Ubuntu desktop or whatever you're using for a GUI is started. Bring up your pfSense firewall virtual machine and make sure you know the address of the LAN interface. Mine here is 192.168.1.1. Yours will be too unless you changed that because it conflicts with your home network or business network. Then bring up your Ubuntu desktop and make sure that it's on the right subnet. Just do IP address and then grep inet. You can see we're here we're on the 192.168.1 subnet, so we're good. Then bring up your browser and go to 192.168.1.1. If you get a warning about their certificate, please click past that. That's just because we're using a self-signed certificate. Type in admin and pfSense for the password. And then click sign in. And we enter our initial setup screen. So we click on next. They're trying to get us to buy global support. If you're running a business, it may be worth it to get this support. I've never purchased it myself, but it kind of depends on how critical your infrastructure is. And it supports the project. And the price is reasonable, I think. Anyway, we'll click next here. Under general information, you can give it a different name or you can keep pfSense. For domain, you can have local domain. I'm going to type home.local domain. If you have an actual domain, you can put that in here. Primary DNS and secondary DNS. You can check with your internet service provider to put their IPs in here, their DNS servers IPs, or you can use some global Google DNS servers. There's 8.8.8.8 and 8.8.8.4. And this is telling us that if our service provider gives us DNS servers, they can override what we put in here, that's okay. So we'll click next. You can leave the server host name, time server host name at its default and change this to your time zone. I'm in GMT -5, so I put that in. Click next. For the WAN interface, this is going to depend on how your network is configured. If you're on a home network, you'll likely leave this at DHCP. And you can leave the rest of these blank. And it's okay to block these private networks from coming in on your WAN interface and to block bogons. Bogons are non-routed IPs. Those shouldn't be used by anyone. So you can leave those checked. All the rest you can leave blank unless you have to configure it for your ISP. And then click next. LAN IP, unless you need this to be on a different subnet, you could leave that at 192.168.1.1 with a 24-bit subnet mask. Click on next. Now we're going to change our admin password. And click next. And then we'll click on reload and it will reboot our firewall. Hey, pfSense is now configured. I'm going to click on check for updates because I always update as soon as I can after installing a new system. And it says an update is available. So we're going to confirm and download the latest version. My internet connection is super slow, so I'm not going to make you wait for this. But once it's up to date, we'll start configuring some features. We've just done the initial setup on pfSense, but something still isn't working. So we'll have a look together. First, if you're using VirtualBox, please make sure your pfSense virtual machine and your Ubuntu desktop, if that's what you're using for your GUI, are running. I also have another VM running for some troubleshooting that's not behind the firewall. You could do this with your host system, or you could have another VM running. It's up to you. And looking at pfSense again, our LAN IP, just make sure you know that. If it's not 192.168.1.1, make sure you know what that is. And our Ubuntu desktop right now doesn't seem to be able to resolve names on the internet. That would be a DNS problem. So if we do ping www.google.com, this will just get me their closest Akamai server. It doesn't work. But if we bring up our other virtual machine and we ping www.google.com, it does work. And we get the IP address of the server where it was going to try and get to. So now if we try and ping by IP address, it works. So that means we aren't able to resolve the name. Our networking works, but our name resolution does not. So let's go back to our firewall. And let's see what might be holding us back here as far as DNS settings. I'm suspecting it's something with our DHCP settings. Yes, we have no DNS servers here. So for now, let's put 8.8.8.8 in here and 8.8.8.8.4. These are public DNS servers that Google lets anyone use. And let's give that a try. Okay, I did a reboot to make the DHCP settings take effect because restarting networking didn't seem to do it. And now it looks like we're getting out to the internet. Yes, we are. So what we had to do to make this start working was go into Services, DHCP Server, and add DNS servers here. Saved our changes and then had to do a release renew